My dad ruined my childhood by choosing substances over our family, but after we escaped, we realized the truth was even much worse than that. I was 12 when my dad begged my mom to let him be homeless. You see, my mom was working 80 hours a week, and it was their millionth argument about how my dad does jack shit all day and needs to start pulling his weight. Up until this point, I barely knew who my mom was, just that she was the only reason I was alive. As for my dad, I thought he was a superhero. A superhero that does nothing but drink beer and watch recorded NBA games from the 80s, that is. I had no idea how dysfunctional our family really was, but this time during their routine argument, instead of defending himself or promising he'd figure stuff out eventually, he told her she deserved better. I watched the whole thing from afar, and it was the first time I had seen my mom cry. "Why can't you just be the man I fell in love with?" she yelled, her voice filled with exhaustion. "Please just move on." My father slurred his words before burying his face in his hands. Meanwhile, I just silently sobbed, wondering if I was the reason mommy and daddy were fighting all the time. That's when my mom did something I never thought I'd see. She gave up. "Okay," she whispered, before trudging up the stairs. My dad just sighed, and his body convulsed for a few seconds as if he was crying. But then he downed another beer and continued to watch NBA. Me and my mom moved out a few months later. I thought things would be harder, gloomier, but I was disgustingly wrong. My mom managed to cut her hours down to almost half, and for the first time ever, we were hanging out every weekend. She knew what topics I was doing in school, and even learned my favorite food. Her eyes were filled with a spark I'd never seen before, and I felt like the luckiest girl in the entire world. Then came my 13th birthday. I begged my mom to invite my dad to the dinner. Her eyes fell to the floor with disappointment. "Are you sure you don't want something else, honey? I finally have enough money to afford the Lego set you always wanted." "I'm sure." I cut her off. I sort of knew that I was being selfish, but I just missed my daddy. Well, not really. I also had a plan to get my parents back together. On the day my mom drove my dad, he looked effing awful. He smelled like sewage and his hands were covered in this ashy grime. On his back was a 5-tier backpack, filled to the brim with what looked like trashy clothes. I didn't even want to hug him, and so when he arrived, he immediately showered. "Mom, you have to leave the house so I can decorate. It's a surprise," I convinced her. She smiled and said, "Okay, honey, whatever you say," before leaving the house. The second the door closed, I hatched my plan. My parents told me they had their first date in a diner on Valentine's Day, so I decorated every corner of the wall with the decorations I thought they'd have back then. Red hearts, streamers, the works. I then used my phone to have Uptown Girl playing, their favorite song to play on the old jukeboxes. I even made a stack of fluffy pancakes with extra maple syrup and a homemade Oreo milkshake, because that was their go-to order. I didn't even invite anyone else to come. So by the time I was done, I woke my dad up from his nap and called my mom to come home. They both entered the kitchen at around the same time. I expected cartoonish love hearts to fill my mom's eyes, for my dad to take my mom's waist and waltz around the kitchen, both falling in love all over again. But instead, my mom pinched the bridge of her nose. "Oh, brother," my dad muttered, before opening the fridge to look for a beer. "So are you guys getting back together now?" I yelled, my tone cheery and naive. They sat me down on the couch. "Honey, our separation was never because of anything you did, and I'm sorry that you ever thought that," my mom said. "But Mom, why can't we just be happy together? Listen to your mother," my dad interrupted. But I didn't want to. Why should I listen to her? She made you homeless. Of course, looking back, I completely regret how I reacted. At the time, I was simply just saying the first thing that came into my 13-year-old mind, but instead of getting mad, my mom just smiled. "I'm sorry, honey, but let's enjoy your birthday." I was pretty stubborn on doing anything but enjoying it, and that's when she pulled out the Lego Creator Expert roller coaster set, aka my dream gift. Immediately, I was distracted and became immediately engrossed into building. Yes, I was later diagnosed with autism. So while my dad kicked his feet up on the table and tried to load up old NBA recordings, my mom helped me. It was like I hadn't even said anything before. She always gave me so much grace. We were an hour in when I noticed a weird smell coming from the living room. It was like vinegar and plastic. My mom went to check it out. I heard a scream. When I ran in, I saw my dad wide-eyed, like a deer caught in headlights. In his hand was what looked like a burnt spoon, and in the other was a loaded syringe. "Please leave me alone," he pleaded, and proceeded to shoot up the entire thing right in front of me. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My friend's words echoed in my head all day. "My mom says your dad's dangerous." The worst part was, she wasn't wrong. That night, my mom got a call from her boss, Diane. I could only hear my mom's side of the conversation, but I could tell something was wrong by the way her shoulders tensed, muscles coiling like springs. "No, I understand. Yes, we're being careful. I appreciate your concern." When she hung up, she sat beside me on the couch where I was working on a new Lego architecture set, the Empire State Building half constructed between us. Diane offered to let us stay in her basement apartment for a while, my mom said, carefully connecting two pieces I was struggling with, her fingers steadier than mine. "She's worried about us." I looked up, abandoning the tiny gray bricks. "Are we going?" My mom's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching beneath her skin. "Remember that this is our home. I won't let him chase us out of our own house." She squeezed my shoulder, her grip firm and reassuring. "We'll be okay." But that night, I heard her moving furniture against the doors, the scrape of wood against wood keeping me awake until dawn. The next day at school, Miss Garcia noticed the dark circles under my eyes, purple half moons that told the story of my sleepless night. "Rough night?" she asked as I slumped into the chair across from her desk. I nodded, then pulled out my journal, the pages crinkled from being stuffed in my backpack. I'd filled 3 pages since our last session, documenting every strange car that drove by our house, every hang-up call that left nothing but breathing on our answering machine, every shadow I thought I saw moving outside my window in the darkness. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "But I'm also really angry. Why can't he just leave us alone?" Ms. Garcia nodded, her silver earrings catching the fluorescent light. "Those are normal feelings, but I'm concerned about your safety. Have you and your mom thought about additional security measures?" That question sparked something in me, a tiny flame of determination. If my dad was watching us, maybe I could watch him back. I found my old phone that night, the one my mom had replaced last Christmas. Its screen slightly cracked but still functional. It still worked when plugged in, the battery too worn to hold a charge. I positioned it on my windowsill, hidden behind my curtain, and downloaded a motion detection app that would record whenever it sensed movement outside, the red light blinking like a tiny guardian. For the next week, I studied his patterns like a scientist observing a strange new species. Tuesday evenings, he'd park 3 houses down in a rusted blue sedan. Thursdays, he'd walk by around 8 p.m., sometimes stopping to stare at our house, his silhouette distorted by the streetlights. Sundays were unpredictable. Sometimes he wouldn't show at all. Other times he'd appear multiple times, pacing the sidewalk across the street like a caged animal. I collected footage of him muttering to himself, trespassing onto our property to leave gifts, once a wilted bouquet, once my old teddy bear that smelled like cigarettes, and once yelling threats at the air, his words slurred, but his anger crystal clear. Each clip went into a folder on my computer labeled evidence, my own private case file growing larger each day. Meanwhile, my mom was fighting her own battle. She'd gotten a promotion at work, which meant more responsibility, but also more flexibility with her hours. She adjusted her schedule so she could drop me off and pick me up from school every day. Her car always first in the pickup line. She installed new locks and a security system that chimed whenever a door or window opened, the electronic melody becoming the soundtrack of our lives. "We're going to be fine," she kept saying, more to herself than to me, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. But I wasn't so sure, especially when I started noticing other students whispering when I walked by, their voices dropping to hushed tones as I approached. Tara, who used to be my friend, avoided eye contact in the hallway, her gaze suddenly fascinated by the floor tiles whenever I came near. Even my favorite teacher, Mr. Reynolds, seemed uncomfortable around me, like he was afraid my dad might burst in at any moment, disrupting the careful order of his classroom. They're treating me like I'm contagious, I told Ms. Garcia during our Thursday session, picking at a loose thread on my jeans. People fear what they don't understand, she replied, her voice calm and measured. And your situation scares them because it reminds them that bad things can happen to anyone. But it's not my fault, I protested, my voice cracking. Of course it's not. None of this is your fault. I hugged my knees to my chest, making myself as small as possible. I just want things to be normal again. Ms. Garcia smiled sadly, compassion warming her dark eyes. I know, but sometimes we have to create a new normal. The next day, Friday, I was walking to my mom's car after school when I spotted him. My dad was standing by the school gates, looking more put together than I'd seen him in months. He'd shaved, his face smooth instead of covered in patchy stubble. His clothes were clean, a button-up shirt tucked into jeans instead of his usual stained t-shirt. He was holding a small gift bag, bright blue with silver tissue paper peeking out the top. My stomach dropped like I was on a roller coaster, but not the fun kind. I froze, unsure whether to run or hide or scream. My feet suddenly cemented to the pavement. He saw me and waved, smiling like everything was normal, like he hadn't broken into our house, like he hadn't left creepy notes, like he hadn't tried to get me to undress in a school bathroom. Princess, he called out, the old nickname that once made me feel special now making my skin crawl. I've been waiting for you. I looked around frantically for my mom's car, but she wasn't there yet. Late meeting, she'd texted earlier, the words now flashing in my mind like a warning. My dad approached, and I backed away, clutching my backpack strap so tightly my knuckles turned white, the fabric cutting into my palms. Stay away from me, I said, my voice shaking like autumn leaves. Don't be like that, he said, his smile faltering, revealing something darker underneath. I brought you something. He held out the gift bag, dangling it like bait. I don't want it. His expression darkened, storm clouds gathering in his eyes. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? You haven't done anything for me. The words burst out before I could stop them, hot and angry. You made mom work until she could barely stand. You chose substances over us. His face contorted with rage, transforming from the father I once knew into something monstrous. He lunged forward, grabbing my arm with one hand while the other reached for my chest, his fingers like claws. You ungrateful little— I dropped my backpack and screamed as loud as I could. Not words, just pure primal terror that tore from my throat. His hand clamped over my mouth, but I bit down hard, tasting the salt of his skin. He yelped and let go. I kept screaming, the sound echoing across the schoolyard. People turned to look, conversation stopping mid-sentence. A staff member, Mr. Kovac, the PE teacher with his clipboard and whistle, came running from the school building, his footsteps pounding the pavement. Hey! He shouted, his voice booming across the space between us. My dad released me and backed away, hands up in mock surrender, suddenly all innocence and confusion. Just talking to my daughter, he said, his voice suddenly calm and reasonable, a mask sliding perfectly into place. Family matter. Mr. Kovac put himself between us, his broad shoulders creating a human shield. You need to leave school property now, sir. My dad's eyes narrowed, but he backed away, each step reluctant. This isn't over, he said to me, quiet enough that only I could hear, the words slithering into my ear. Then he walked away, disappearing around the corner like a bad dream. My mom arrived 5 minutes later to find me sitting in the school office, shaking, while Mr. Kovac and the principal explained what happened, their voices low and serious. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, the familiar scent of her perfume momentarily drowning out my fear. That's it, she said, her voice steel and determination. We're getting a permanent restraining order. That night I couldn't sleep. Every noise made me jump, the house settling, the refrigerator humming, the wind in the trees outside my window. Every shadow seemed threatening, reaching for me with dark fingers. I kept thinking about what my dad had said. This isn't over. He was right. It wasn't over. But maybe I could help end it. I stayed up until 3 a.m., my eyes burning from staring at my computer screen, compiling all my evidence. The photos, grainy but unmistakable. The videos, shaky but clear enough. The journal entries, my handwriting growing more frantic with each page. I put everything together in a video presentation titled, He Says He Loves Me. I added text explaining each incident, dates, times, locations, creating a timeline of terror. I showed the progression, how he went from watching from a distance to leaving notes to trying to touch me inappropriately, each step more invasive than the last. The next morning, bleary-eyed but determined, I showed it to my mom. She watched the whole thing without speaking, her coffee growing cold beside her. When it ended, she pulled me into a hug and held me for a long time, her heartbeat steady against my ear. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I had no idea it was this extensive, this calculated. It's not your fault, I said, echoing what everyone had been telling me, finally starting to believe it myself. What do you want to do with this? She asked, gesturing to my laptop, the evidence of our nightmare glowing on the screen. I want people to know the truth. With Ms. Garcia's help, I wrote a letter to accompany the video, choosing my words carefully to explain the pattern of stalking and harassment that had become our daily reality. We sent it to my school counselor, my mom's HR department because my dad had called there once pretending to be my stepdad trying to get her schedule and a local shelter for families escaping abuse that Ms. Garcia recommended. Their contact information written in her neat handwriting. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The shelter referred us to a free legal clinic that specialized in cases like ours, understanding the unique dangers of our situation. A lawyer named Lawrence met with us the same day, his office cluttered but welcoming, reviewing my evidence with a grim expression that grew darker with each photo and video. This is extremely concerning behavior, he said, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. We need to file for a permanent no-contact order immediately and ensure he can't come near your property. Will it work? My mom asked, her hand finding mine across the desk. Lawrence was honest, his eyes meeting ours directly. It depends, but this evidence is compelling, especially the pattern of escalation you've documented. The court will take this seriously. A week later, my dad was served with the papers, the sheriff delivering them to the motel where he'd been staying. I thought I'd feel relieved, but instead, I felt terrified, imagining his rage when he read the legal language barring him from our lives. What would he do now? I didn't have to wait long to find out. He started posting on social media, calling me a spoiled brat who turned her back on blood. He claimed my mom had brainwashed me, poisoning me against him. He even created a fake profile pretending to be me, posting awful things about my mom, the words so unlike anything I would say. But something unexpected happened too. My video had quietly made its way through the school, not in a viral everyone watching it at lunch way, but in a whispered, have you seen this way, passing from teacher to counselor to parent to student. Teachers who had seen it started checking in on me more, their questions casual but their eyes watchful. Tara approached me in the hallway one Tuesday morning, her backpack clutched to her chest like armor. I'm sorry, she said, the words tumbling out quickly. My parents wouldn't let me hang out with you because they were scared of your dad, but I saw your video. That really sucks. Yeah, I said, not knowing what else to say. The understatement of the century hanging between us. Do you want to sit with us at lunch? She offered. A small olive branch extended across the chasm that had formed between us, Small gestures like that helped, creating tiny islands of normalcy in my sea of chaos. But I still jumped at every sound, the slam of a locker making my heart race. Still checked my window a dozen times before bed, making sure the latch was secure. Still woke up from nightmares where my dad was standing over me, his eyes empty and his hands reaching. The final confrontation happened 3 weeks after the restraining order was filed. I was walking to my mom's car after school, our new normal, when I spotted him in the school parking lot. He was pacing, muttering to himself, occasionally taking swigs from a paper bag-covered bottle, his movements jerky and unpredictable. I froze, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. But this time, I wasn't alone. The school security guard, Mr. Williams, who had been briefed about my situation thanks to the video, noticed him too, his radio already in hand. "Go back inside," Mr. Williams told me firmly, his voice leaving no room for argument. Now. I ran back to the school entrance while Mr. Williams approached my dad, his stance cautious but determined. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see my dad getting increasingly agitated, waving his arms, pointing toward the school, his face reddening with each passing second. The security guard spoke into his radio, the black device pressed to his lips. Within minutes, 2 police cars pulled into the lot, lights flashing but sirens silent. I watched from the school doors as they talked to my dad, their postures tense but professional. He kept trying to walk away, but they blocked his path, forming a human barrier between him and the school. Finally, one officer took his arm and led him to the police car, my dad's resistance melting into defeated compliance. They searched his backpack and pulled out the bottle, a kitchen knife with a worn wooden handle and what looked like an old photograph, its edges curled with age. My dad looked toward the school, his eyes scanning until they found me watching from the doorway, a small figure behind glass. For a moment, our eyes locked across the distance. I expected to see hatred or anger, but instead I saw something worse. Nothing. His eyes were empty, like he was looking through me rather than at me, as if I were already a ghost in his memory. They put him in the back of the police car and drove away, the red and blue lights fading into the distance. My mom picked me up 30 minutes later. The principal had called her, and she'd left work immediately, her hair still in the neat bun she wore for important meetings. She looked exhausted but relieved, the contradiction written in the lines around her eyes. "They're holding him for violating the restraining order," she explained as we drove home, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "They found alcohol and a weapon. It's serious this time." I nodded, staring out the window at the familiar streets passing by, houses where normal families lived normal lives. I should have felt victorious. This was what we wanted. Him gone, us safe. But I just felt hollow, emptied out like a pumpkin after Halloween. When we got home, my mom didn't say anything about what happened. She just handed me a slice of leftover birthday cake, the one we'd bought to replace the disastrous pancake dinner, and sat beside me while I worked on my newest Lego set, a space shuttle this time with tiny astronaut figures. We built in silence. No music, no TV, just the satisfying click of bricks fitting together and the sound of peace finally settling around us like a blanket. "Mom?" I said after a while, connecting the shuttle's wing. "Hmm?" She responded, sorting through the smaller pieces. "Is he ever coming back?" She put down the instruction manual and looked at me directly, her eyes clear and certain. "No, honey, he's not." "Good," I said, and meant it, the word small but definitive. That night, I slept through the night for the first time in months, no dreams disturbing my rest. In the morning, I deleted the folder labeled evidence from my computer, watching the progress bar as it erased my digital archive of fear. I didn't need it anymore. At school, things slowly shifted. I wasn't the girl with the dangerous dad anymore. I was just me, the quiet kid who liked Lego and struggled with group projects and sometimes said the wrong thing because social cues were hard to read through the static of my thoughts. Ms. Garcia helped me understand that my autism wasn't the reason my dad became who he was. It wasn't the reason my parents fought. It wasn't the reason for any of it. "Your brain works differently," she explained during one of our sessions, her office a safe harbor in my week. "That's not good or bad. It's just you. And you deserve to be loved exactly as you are." 2 months after my dad was arrested, my mom and I started a new tradition. Every Sunday, we'd build something together. Sometimes Lego, sometimes a puzzle, sometimes a craft project from the kits that had started appearing in our house. We'd talk about our week, about school, about work, never about him. One Sunday, as we were putting the finishing touches on a Lego skyline of New York City, the tiny plastic buildings creating a miniature Manhattan on our coffee table, my mom asked, "Are you happy?" I thought about it. The question bigger than it seemed. Was I happy? I still had nightmares sometimes, waking with his name caught in my throat, still flinched at unexpected noises, my body remembering fear before my mind could process safety, still missed the idea of what a father should be, the bedtime stories and piggyback rides and dad jokes that existed only in my imagination now. But I also had a mom who loved me enough to fight for me, her strength revealed in crisis. I had a therapist who helped me understand myself better, my autism a different operating system, not a flaw. I had friends who were slowly coming back into my life, bridges being carefully rebuilt. I had a home that felt safe again, the furniture no longer barricading the doors. "I'm getting there," I answered honestly, placing a tiny tree in Central Park. She smiled and handed me the final piece, the tiny Statue of Liberty that completed the set, its green patina perfectly rendered in plastic. "Me too," she said, our fingers touching as I took the piece. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my mom making breakfast. Not pancakes. We'd both silently agreed those were off the menu for a while, but French toast with cinnamon, the sweet smell winding its way under my door. The smell pulled me out of bed and into the kitchen, my feet cold against the tile floor. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, sliding a plate toward me, the toast golden brown and dusted with powdered sugar. "I've got some news." My stomach tightened, muscles contracting with instinctive dread. In my experience, news usually meant something bad was lurking around the corner. "Your dad's court date is set for next month," she said, sitting across from me, her own plate untouched. "The prosecutor called yesterday." I pushed my French toast around the plate, creating sugary trails. "Do I have to go?" "No, honey. You don't have to see him ever again if you don't want to." Relief washed over me like a warm shower, muscles I didn't know were tense finally relaxing. I took a bite of food, suddenly hungry, the sweetness exploding on my tongue. "But," my mom continued, watching me carefully, "they might need your video as evidence. Would that be okay?" I nodded, swallowing. "Will he go to jail?" "I don't know, but he'll get help, one way or another." I wasn't sure if I cared anymore whether he got help. Part of me, a small, mean part I didn't like to acknowledge, hoped he'd suffer, locked away where he couldn't hurt anyone else. The rest of me just wanted to forget he existed, to erase him from my story. At school that day, Tara invited me to her birthday party that weekend. A sleepover with 5 other girls, all from our grade. My first invitation since everything happened. The pink card decorated with glitter and stickers. "Are you sure your parents are okay with me coming?" I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. Tara rolled her eyes, the gesture somehow comforting in its normalcy. "Duh. My mom actually feels super bad about before. She wants to make it up to you." That night, I asked my mom if I could go, the invitation propped against my water glass at dinner. She hesitated, her forehead creasing with worry, the protective instinct that had kept us safe now potentially keeping me isolated. "I'll be fine," I insisted, leaning forward. "Tara's house is like the safest place ever. Her dad has those fancy security cameras everywhere." My mom smiled, the worry line softening. "Okay, but call me if you need anything. Anytime." The sleepover was normal, glorious mysteriously, boringly normal. We ate too much pizza, the cheese stretching in long strings from slice to plate. We watched a scary movie that wasn't actually scary, screaming at the predictable jump scares. We stayed up way too late talking about crushes and teachers and TikTok dances, our sleeping bags arranged in a circle on Tara's bedroom floor. No one mentioned my dad. No one treated me like I was fragile or dangerous or contagious. For a few hours, I was just a regular 13-year-old girl having fun with friends. The weight of the past year temporarily lifted from my shoulders. When I got home the next day, my mom was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers, brochures spread out like a colorful fan. "What's all that?" I asked, dropping my overnight bag by the door with a thud. "College brochures," she said, grinning, a new light in her eyes. "I'm thinking about going back to school." I blinked in surprise. The idea so unexpected it took a moment to process. "Really? For what? Social work, maybe? Or psychology?" She shuffled the papers, organizing them into neat piles. "I've been thinking about it for a while. Ms. Garcia actually suggested it. But what about your job?" I asked, practical concerns bubbling up. "I'd keep working, just cut back my hours. And there are night classes, online options." She trailed off, looking uncertain for the first time in months. "What do you think?" I thought about how much my mom had changed since we left my dad, how she smiled more, the expression reaching her eyes, how she had time for me now, present in ways she couldn't be before, how she was discovering parts of herself that had been buried under stress and exhaustion, like archaeological treasures being carefully unearthed. "I think it's awesome," I said, and meant it, pride warming my voice. 2 weeks later, we got a call from Lawrence, our lawyer. My dad had accepted a plea deal: violation of restraining order, possession of a weapon, attempted assault. He'd served 6 months, then mandatory rehab, followed by 5 years of probation. During that time, he couldn't contact us or come within 500 feet of our home or my school, the legal barrier protecting us from his chaos. "It's over," my mom said after hanging up, the phone placed carefully on the counter. "Really over." But it didn't feel over. Not yet. There was still a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen, tight and persistent. Still questions that needed answers, hovering in the back of my mind. "I want to write him a letter," I told Ms. Garcia during our next session, the word surprising even me. She raised her eyebrows, leaning forward slightly. "Are you sure? You don't owe him any communication." "I know, but there are things I need to say. Not for him, for me." She nodded, understanding filling her eyes. "What would you say?" I'd thought about this a lot, the words forming during quiet moments between classes, in the shower, as I fell asleep. "I tell him that I don't hate him, that I'm sad about who he became, that I wish things had been different, but I'm not waiting for him to change anymore." Ms. Garcia handed me a notebook, its pages blank and waiting. "Write it here. You don't have to send it if you change your mind." I spent the next hour writing, crossing out, rewriting. When I finished, I felt lighter somehow, as if the words had been weights I'd been carrying. Ms. Garcia read it silently, then looked up at me with a small smile that conveyed more than words could. "This is very mature, you know. Most adults couldn't express themselves this clearly." I shrugged, embarrassed by the praise, but secretly pleased. "So should I send it?" "That's entirely up to you, but I think you've already gotten what you needed from writing it." She was right. I folded the letter and put it in my backpack. Maybe someday I'd send it, maybe not. What mattered was that I'd said what I needed to say, even if only to myself. The words no longer trapped inside me. Spring turned to summer. My mom enrolled in 2 online courses for the fall semester, her textbooks already arriving in Amazon packages. I joined a Lego robotics club at the community center, finding others who understood the satisfaction of precise construction. We repainted my bedroom. No more childish pink, but a cool teal that felt more me, more current, more peaceful. One Saturday in July, we were cleaning out the garage when my mom found a box of old photo albums, dusty and forgotten in a corner. "Want to look through these?" she asked, blowing dust off the top one, particles dancing in the sunlight streaming through the garage windows. I hesitated, my body tensing automatically. "Are there pictures of him?" "Some," she admitted, her honesty a constant I'd come to rely on. "But there are also pictures of you as a baby, your first steps, your preschool graduation, good memories worth keeping." We sat on the garage floor and opened the first album, the plastic pages sticking slightly from disuse. There I was, a tiny bundle in a hospital blanket, red-faced and squalling. My mom, looking exhausted but radiant, dark circles under her eyes but joy in her smile. And yes, my dad, younger and cleaner, staring at me with wonder, his finger caught in my tiny fist. "He loved you," my mom said softly, her voice gentle with memory. "Before the substances took over, he really did." I traced the photo with my finger, the glossy surface smooth beneath my touch. This man was a stranger to me now, as distant as a character in a book. What happened to him? My mom sighed, the sound containing multitudes. "A lot of things. He lost his job, started drinking too much. One bad choice led to another, each one making the next one easier." She closed the album, her decision gentle but firm. "But that's his story, not yours. You don't have to carry it." That night, I dreamed about my dad. Not the scary version who showed up at my school with violence in his eyes, but the one who used to push me on the swings when I was little, his hands strong and safe on my back. The one who taught me to ride a bike, running alongside until I found my balance. The one who existed before everything fell apart, before chemicals rewired his brain and stole him away. I woke up crying, not sobbing, just quiet tears that leaked out while I slept, dampening my pillow. I wiped them away and stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows from the streetlight outside dance across my room, forming patterns that dissolved as quickly as they formed. For the first time, I allowed myself to grieve, not just for what happened, but for what would never be. The father-daughter dances I'd never attend, corsage on my wrist, the driving lessons he'd never give me, patient instructions from the passenger seat, the normal, boring family life I'd once taken for granted, not recognizing its value until it was gone. The next morning, I asked my mom if we could visit Grandma Frances, her mom, who lived about 2 hours away. We hadn't seen her since before everything happened with my dad. Life too chaotic for family visits. "Of course," my mom said, looking surprised but pleased, her smile immediate. "I'll call her today." Grandma Frances lived in a small house with a huge garden, flowers spilling from every bed in riotous color. She hugged me so tight when we arrived that I could barely breathe, her arms surprisingly strong for someone so small. "Look at you," she said, holding me at arm's length, examining me from head to toe, growing like a devil's lettuce. We spent the weekend helping her in the garden, dirt under our fingernails and sun on our backs. We ate homemade cookies, still warm from the oven, chocolate chips melting on our fingers. We played board games that were older than I was, the boxes worn at the corners from decades of family gatherings. At night, I slept in my mom's childhood bedroom, surrounded by her old books and stuffed animals, teenage posters still on the walls, a time capsule of who she had been. On Sunday morning, Grandma Frances took me for a walk while my mom made breakfast, the smell of bacon and coffee following us out the door. "Your mom tells me you've had a rough year," she said as we strolled through her neighborhood, her pace unhurried but steady. I nodded, kicking a pebble down the sidewalk, watching it bounce ahead of us. "You know, your mom went through some hard times when she was young too. Different than yours, but hard nonetheless." I look up, surprised. My mom never talked about her childhood, that chapter of her life a closed book. "She came out stronger," Grandma continued, her voice matter-of-fact but kind. "Just like you will. It's the Williams women way." "Williams women?" I repeated, liking the sound of it, the sense of belonging it conveyed. My dad's last name wasn't Williams, it was Lopez, but I'd always had my mom's last name. Now I understood why, the choice suddenly clear. When we got back to the house, my mom was setting the table for breakfast, plates of eggs and toast waiting. She looked up and smiled when we walked in, her face relaxed in a way it rarely was at home, and something clicked into place for me. This was my family, not the broken one I'd tried so desperately to fix on my 13th birthday, but this one. My mom, my grandma, me. It was enough. It was more than enough. The school year started again. 8th grade. New teachers, same friends, familiar routines. I still saw Ms. Garcia once a week, but our sessions sessions were shorter now, focusing less on trauma and more on managing my autism and navigating social situations. Sometimes we just played Uno and talked about normal teenage stuff, music, movies, the drama of middle school lunch tables. My dad wrote to me once, a letter forwarded through Lawrence. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope, the slanted letters unmistakable, and felt my heart race, but not in fear this time. Just anticipation, maybe curiosity. I didn't open it right away. I carried it around in my backpack for 3 days, taking it out occasionally to look at it, then putting it back, not yet ready for whatever words it contained. Finally, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, I sat on my bed and carefully opened the envelope, the paper tearing slightly along the seal. The letter inside was short, the handwriting steadier than I remembered. I'm sorry for everything. I'm getting help now. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. You deserve better. Love, Dad. No excuses, no blame, just an apology, simple and unadorned. I folded it back up and put it in my desk drawer, tucked between my journal and a book of poetry Ms. Garcia had given me. I didn't know how I felt about it yet, and that was okay. The feelings would come when they were ready. That evening, my mom and I worked on our latest project, a 3D puzzle of the Eiffel Tower, its intricate pieces spread across the dining table. As we fitted pieces together, the tower slowly taking shape between us, I thought about how much had changed in a year, how much I had changed, growing in ways that couldn't be measured by height marks on a doorframe. Mom, I said, searching for a particular piece, the one that would connect 2 sections. She responded, not looking up from her work. I think I'm happy now. For real. She looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Yeah? I nodded. Yeah. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her touch saying everything words couldn't. No grand speeches needed. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, light streaming through our windows. Inside, the pieces of our lives were finally fitting together, creating something new and beautiful from what had been broken. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days. Still nightmares sometimes. Still moments when a random smell or sound would catapult me back to that terrible birthday. But those moments were getting fewer and farther between. And in between them was life. Messy and complicated and wonderful. My mom was right. We were getting there.